Welcome to Business Prowess with Rafael and Dr. Andrea. Our show will bring you the best insights, ideas, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs and CEOs in the business world. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn from the best and stay ahead of the game. Sifu Rafael is the founder of 5 unique shows. He's a fitness professional, solutions expert, executive coach, and head instructor at Max Martial Arts and Fitness in New York. Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller is an award-winning international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and CEO of the Red Carpet Connection Publicity, Publishing, and Talent Agency, and CEO of IgniteYourRelationship.com. Known as the Dream Maker, she makes visionaries' dreams come true, bigger than they ever dare to desire.
Dr. Andrea, happy Friday. How are you today?
I am absolutely wonderful. I'm so excited about today's guests. They sound so much fun.
They are. Let's go ahead and bring them on. We have Roger and Heather. Come on down. How are you both today?
Come on down. I love it.
Well, awesome. Yeah, excited to be here.
If we're going to say come on down, we need like
yeah.
Price is right. Yeah.
I actually just auditioned for a game show yesterday.
Really? Oh,
Really?
that's so fun.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that.
I'm in a musical called James and the Giant Peach, and there's a little beginning in the symphony at the beginning, or the orchestra. There's like do 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 do, and we always think it sounds like a game show. That's excellent.
I love it.
Cool. Well, Roger, have you been on a game show lately?
I have not. I was on the Uncle Al show or something when I was like 4 years old, but that's I think that's the extent of my TV broadcasting career.
Hey, I've never been on a game show, so that sounds more exciting. I love it.
What everybody doesn't realize is that today is a game show. I'm just kidding.
Wow, surprise twist.
Yeah,
The price
would be funny.
Can you answer this correctly? Why is mastering business communication so important? And the prize goes to
We all
Roger.
go.
Yeah, I can take a shot at that. I'll share with you that to me, business, if you're looking to build an organization, build a department, maybe you're in corporate America, maybe you're an entrepreneur and own your own business. The price of not having the real answer, the price of not having effective, positive business communication can cost you millions, tens of millions of dollars, because you'll never reach your potential as a business person or as a leader within your own organization. And if I could elaborate just quickly on that, I would really point out 3 things I've found and I have 32 years of experience in the business world. 25 years of it was in corporate America. 7 years of it, almost 8 now, was as an entrepreneur with 7- and 8-figure companies, built from scratch from ground up. And literally, it's 3 things. One is making effective requests, and we can talk about that later in the show if you want to. But making effective requests so that when you're asking somebody on your team for something, they know exactly what you want, when you want it, how you want it delivered, and what the reason for it is. And we mess that up in meetings so often, I've found, as a culture. The second thing would be, we are quick. We're human beings, and our ancestors made very fast decisions to stay alive, right? That's scary. That's safe. That may be good. That's not. And that's how, we survive. We propagated, and we still have that in our DNA. So we will run up what's called the ladder of inference, where somebody will say something in a meeting, and they may have meant it in a different context, but we receive it in a different way. And then in our mind, even while we're still presenting or we're doing a PowerPoint or we're talking, we're having this whole other internal dialogue like, Dr. Andrea, she looked at me weird when I said that. What is she thinking? Does she not agree with this point? And you go all the way up this ladder of inference to, you know what? I don't like Dr. Andrea. You know what? I don't like her. I don't even know why she's in this company, because we've gone up this ladder because we didn't practice effective communication by saying afterwards, hey, Dr. Andrea, when I said this, you had a very visceral reaction. I'm just curious. She may tell me, I just got a text from my son's school and he got in trouble again. I was looking at that. My bad. Now I realize, oh, wow, this whole conversation in my head was for nothing, but I have to take the time afterwards to find that out. And then the third thing I would say around business communication is feedback. Too often we give, the sandwich. Everybody knows this. Sifu, let me give you something really positive. Now I'm going to punch you in the stomach, and then I'm going to give you something really positive. You're waiting for the, hey, you're a great podcast host, but we're always waiting for the but. Versus,
nobody likes the but.
Nobody likes the but, and the way to change that is to really give very formulaic feedback. Like, when you invited me on your podcast and gave me a forum to share my thoughts and feelings, it made me feel very empowered, and it made me feel benevolent that I'm able to share with your audience. And I really appreciate that about you, Sifu. And that now is something that's feedback that you have to take. You can't just say, oh, it's nothing, because I was very prescriptive in what you did, the action you took, how it made me feel. You can't argue with, and I'm grateful for it. And you can't argue with that. And too often we give feedback hey, you crushed it on that podcast. What is that? No, when you said this and you acted this way, it gave me a wonderful feeling inside. And because of that, yada, yada, yada. So I would just say that those three things, and we can go into depth later if you want to, those three things I have found have helped me scale organizations with teams much quicker, because there's not a lot of noise in the system.
Right. Love it.
I love
Heather,
it too.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's so fascinating hearing from Roger, just because of the parallels. Like, I do so much work helping people in their intimate relationships with their communication, and it's just literally all the same skills.
Yeah.
Like, it's not two different sets of skills. So I love hearing that. And it also really parallels my own experience where, here I am, like, I teach people how to communicate. Like, this is what I do. And to also be so humbled in business communication at times where it's like, I'm trying to communicate with a podcast editor or with an assistant or with a staff coach or therapist, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for, what I need. And in my mind, it's just so crystal clear, right? And then you're like, oh, I see how they interpreted this differently. I see. So I think that, the self-awareness, the humility is super important. And basically what it does, like I have a great assistant and editor right now, is it just creates this sense of ease so that you can focus on your business strategy more and not get caught in the weeds trying to, micromanage personnel and communication issues.
Micromanage. That's also part of communication, right? When we're trying to hold on to it. Oh, it's almost like a parent, a helicopter parent, right? It's the same kind of thing. We need to allow somebody to have that freedom, that space, and it's having that clear communication come across to let everybody know that they have a voice.
And if you're micromanaging, I would argue you don't need that employee.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. You're paying an employee to do what you're going to do for them anyway, or tell them exactly what to do. So it's a waste of money, and it's a huge waste of time.
Yeah. And it goes back to like, you have to hire people that you can trust. And so now, having gone through so many attempts at hiring people, I've really realized that, when I have someone I trust, I don't feel that need to kind of be, with them in every single step. It's like, hey, can you take care of this? And they're the type of person who can figure it out and run with it and get back to me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, you already got that done? That was so fast. Or, oh, you already moved on to the next task? And it's such a delight to have those people. So to me, it's like, it makes the communication a lot easier.
Right. Dr. Andrea, also, because of what you do as a profession, how important is it for mastering business communication?
So we were talking about this morning, a business partner of mine and I, this communication is one of the most important things for me. And, I think that's why, throughout the years, being a publicist and a person who does connection and relationship communication for people, and I own multiple different businesses and they're all about communication. Recently, we've realized that my title is more of a chief influencer, because as a chief influencer, you're the person behind the scenes helping other people to be seen, heard, and understood. And it's the understood part that really is the basis of the relationship. And I have a favor to ask of Roger. So Roger did a really great way of describing how if communication is the perception is different than what is expected, by using me as an example. And he used you. And then he shifted and said something very positive about you. Roger, you ended with only the negative, as if I were the bad employee. So I would like you to now reverse that and say the positive. So you have a positive thing about me, because I also believe that with communication, for every negative, we have to have 2 positives. So please go.
Fair. Dr. Andrea, you are incredibly witty, but you're also very professional, very well spoken.
Aww.
So you can even take a but. If you put a positive thing after a but, it surprises people even more.
I like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna take out the but and say and.
Yeah.
Because I think the but says but when you say and, you're adding to the flavor.
I agree. I was trying to be.
I liked the little delightful surprise after the but as well.
And my wife above her office has an ampersand, right? Like the and sign, because she lives her life under the auspice of it's not or, it's and.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me, I've started taking improv classes recently. And so the whole thing with improv is yes and it's been really fascinating for me to see the parallels between the therapy world and the improv world. And a lot of businesses will hire, improv teams to come in and do, professional development with their team. But, it talks about eye contact. It talks about attunement to the person you're talking to and their emotional state. It talks about don't just kind of say yes, add something, like add value. So I think there's a lot of great concepts and principles there actually as well.
There is. So let's talk about also, and you kind of touched upon it a little bit, Roger, rekindling relationships, what that sparks. For example, when you initially said that, Dr. Andrea, you thought she gave you a look, and all of a sudden you had these perceived ideas, and then you didn't like her, right, in your head, but because it was your own thinking, you never clarified it. So now you have to say, wait a minute, to rekindle that, and let me find out what really is going on with her. Why did I even think the negativity aspects of it? So let's get into why rekindling a relationship can be an incredible aspect of how we conduct our businesses.
100%. I would say that, again, you cannot scale a business, a firm, without open, honest dialogue and a higher level of trust within your organization. And you watch too many companies scale and then they lose that trust. They expand, they hire a bunch of people, they don't onboard correctly in a systematic and a consistent way, and that trust erodes, and then you see the business suffer. So in my hypothetical example with Dr. Andrea, what I would do afterwards is I literally would find time after the meeting and say, hey, can I grab you real quick? Yeah. And I would start off with the story I'm telling myself. Like that phrase, the story I'm telling myself, then takes her off the hook of the blame game. And to rekindle that relationship, I would say, the story I'm telling myself is, when I was presenting, this happened, and here's what I was thinking. I know that I don't believe that to be true, but can you share with me what caused the reaction? Oh my gosh, and I got a text from my son's school. It had nothing to do with your talk, nothing. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. That makes me feel more supported, and certainly I'm glad that I didn't let that get free rent in my head. So approaching somebody with a whole thing of, this is a story I'm telling myself. I'm not saying you did this or you're a bad person or that I'm even right. What I'm seeking is context.
Yeah.
Like what was said or done was a fact, but I don't have the context. And so this is the story I'm telling myself. Help me understand that I'm wrong. Because if I don't do that, to answer your root question, the next meeting, I'm going to have a chip on my shoulder with Dr. Andrea for no reason, because She got a text from her son's school, had nothing to do with my presentation, right? But now I got a story. And if I don't rekindle that relationship with her, the trust erodes again. Because what else, it's our reticular activating system. We'll start looking for things that will prove us right. We will be literally in an echo chamber in our own mind, me trying to find reasons why Dr. Andrea disrespects me in a meeting or whatever. Again, this is all hypothetical stuff. But if I don't stop that, it builds quickly. And I've watched it happen so fast. And I'm sure that Heather can speak to the fact that the same thing happens in the home, in the bedroom, where when you get in an argument over the dish in the sink, it has nothing to do with the dish in the sink. That's because we didn't go back and get clarity and rekindle that relationship when we were first, harmed, or we felt we were harmed from whatever action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heather, I'd like you to build upon that. So I also own an intimacy and relationship business. That's how I left law enforcement and started that business. It's called Ignite Your Relationship. That the idea that, like somebody in a relationship may say something like, or like like make a sound like something was uncomfortable. And then the person thinks, I never want to hurt that person, and then stops everything they're doing when it may have been something simple like a wrinkle in a sheet, or the pillow wasn't right, or they had a crick in their neck. And it had nothing to do with the intimate moment whatsoever. And now that person is hands off, never going to touch them again. So Heather, give some other examples about how you've seen that happen with communication.
For sure. I mean, I think what you're speaking to is we can have a tendency to take things personally. So I love the book, The 4 Agreements. I recommend that to my clients a lot because there's a whole chapter in there about taking nothing personally. And I'm sharing this as a person who's pretty sensitive and used to take things very personally. So when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is possible to not take that on when someone's giving feedback. And I think the thing is realizing, like Roger kind of hinted at, that like everyone has their own story, right? Like we all typically, have good intentions when we're communicating. And I think that's another important piece, is like giving somebody some grace, giving somebody the benefit of the doubt that they're not trying to be a jerk, right? Maybe they're having their own emotional reaction and they got a little defensive. Maybe, like you said, there was a wrinkle in the sheet, or maybe, their dog is sick and it has to go to the vet. Like you just don't know what's going on with people. And I actually think that's something I learned from my dad, is like, you don't know people's stories. And so I think it's really important that we keep an open mind. And if our boss is cranky with us, or if a colleague, I had an incident with a colleague on an email listserv where my former employee said something and I kind of like stuck up for her. And there was this whole, like, we should be speaking this way, or this was an ableist comment, or this was whatever. And I think it turned into a really healthy dialogue. But I think the reason it did that is because, both myself and the other therapist were able to realize, hey, I get that you are someone who helps people. I get that you are someone who cares, and, that you want to do right by people. And so we were able to have kind of like a private aside. And even though we don't maybe agree on the execution of like what creating a welcoming environment in a group of therapists looks like, there was a respect level there that allowed us to move forward in a healthy way.
I got to tell you, when we can think about rekindling relationships, I just had a meeting with somebody that used to be a client about 20 years ago. And the only reason he showed up is because a new client brought him. And he goes, hey, I'm working with Rafael. And they're like, oh, I know Rafael. And so I had an event over the weekend, and he brought this guy, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. The minute I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh. And I gave him a hug, and it was like nothing ever changed. And he's like, I got to come back and see you. I need to be with you. I need to. And then once they took the course I was teaching, they were both of them were like, I am beyond floored about what you taught us today, and it actually is going to help our business. The guy that initially, my current client who brought the old client, came back to me this past Wednesday, and he said to me, you know, what you taught us, we used, and I closed a mega whale of a client. So thank you. And it wasn't even my client. It was Jeffrey's client who we were working together. He brought him in, but because we used the techniques you showed us, we closed them. So thank you so much. He goes, I don't even know how to repay you. I said, well, just keep coming. Let's keep working together. Right. But it's that rekindling. And he was able to bring someone, because I never, when somebody leaves me, I don't badmouth them. I'm always open to them coming back. You never know what life can bring, right? And guess what? My new client is now bringing me a bunch of other clients because of what I've done for him. And some of them already had been my clients back in the day. And they're like, yeah, we need to go back to Rafael. So it's that rekindling, right? It's how do we bring new business because we didn't burn out bridges along the way.
100%.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Roger had mentioned something earlier that I'd like to address. So, we do our whole lives, everything that we see, experience, hear, witness, or believe, our perception, we do create stories around it because that's the way we have an understanding or how we pull things into our world, is making a story around it. And when those stories don't serve us, we often don't realize that we can release those stories. And so as a neuroscientist, we're able to work with clients so that they can release that, negative emotion or negative belief about the story and get what the actual learnings are of why we created that story in the beginning without having to relive the situation. So like, let's say you had a big breakup, whether it was with a business partner or a personal partner. Both of those are like traumatic, sometimes even more so in a business, because now you've got hundreds and thousands of clients instead of 2 kids. You've got hundreds of kids. And in that big breakup, if you have the opportunity to not relive the fight, not relive the situation, but to think, what are the learnings? What do I need to know about that situation in order to let that go? Whatever animosity or hurt or guilt or anger or sadness or whatever that you have around that. And then by knowing that, that I'm going to be okay, and that I needed to be, maybe resilient in my values, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool. And then, so there's this more to that than that. However, some people just in hearing me say that might be able to shift and be able to let some things go just by that simple comment. And of course, I do more expanded processes to help release those beliefs. But whatever story that we have, every story is a story, and every story is based on our perceptions, and every story can be changed. Every single one.
Yeah. 100%. Like that is sort of so much of what coaching and therapy is about, whether it's an intimate relationship context or a business context. And, hearing you say that, Dr. Andrea, it reminds me of when I very first started my private practice. I actually started it with a business partner. This is like 14 years ago now. And we were friends and we had been roommates at one point, and she was pretty chill. And I was like, yeah, this is like a good fit. Right. And it just started becoming clear after a while that I was kind of doing more of the marketing stuff, and she was kind of not always following through on that. And so we just were able to have a really honest conversation and get to a point where she realized, I actually want to have like a secure government job. I want like the opposite of entrepreneurship. And so it was like this great learning that came out of it. It was like this clarity of like what she actually wanted. And I was able to kind of make her whole with some money she had put into the business already, and to kind of move forward on the business on my own. But it's like without that communication step, where we clarified instead of assuming, it could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
Business partnerships, I would argue, I've unfortunately been divorced, now remarried, but and have a wonderful relationship with my ex-wife, and and we co-parent wonderfully. We spend Thanksgiving over there this year, and her husband spent Christmas Eve with us. So that,
as
even
it
though our
should
kids
be, you are a perfect model of others.
Yeah, our kids are already grown, but they when they come home, they just love that because they can be with all four of their parents. But I say that I've also had business partnerships, and those partnerships haven't always ended well. And I would liken the two to be very similar: a divorce and a real business partnership with a big company and employees and all that. The employee, I would argue, Dr. Andrea, that it's not even the clients, it's the employees that are kids. I've even had an employee say to me, I don't know, I feel like a kid at divorce, like mom and dad are fighting because my business partner and I were not getting along, and they're living it. They're living it in the house, which is the office. So we all need to be cognizant of that as business people, that we're all little kids inside. And when
it's so true.
Yeah. And when we act, in a not nice way to a business partner or somebody, that affects the people who work for us and are around us. And just like a child, they can't just leave. They got to be in the office. So they have to stay in it, just like a child has to stay in it. And it's something that anybody listening to this podcast that has a business partnership that's not doing well, work hard to finish impeccably. And that's just a big motto of mine, is finish impeccably. And the reason, Rafael, you have these ability to rekindle relationships is because you finished impeccably when something came to a close, so that they could come back into your life, because there wasn't baggage there. And so many of us, I'm going to get the last word in, or I'm going to get,
so true.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, you'll never regret finishing impeccably.
I appreciate what you guys are talking about, because by not burning our bridges or burning our boats, there are times where there just needs to be space, because that space allows people to get their bearings and to let some of the story, the hurt and all of that go. And then they can see things differently. It's kind of funny, like if somebody in your life is separated from you for a long time, or it passes away, like let's say somebody had a torrid craziness. It's like you forget that over time, when that person even talks about that person, the story's not as depth and painful as it was. It's not everyone. Some people go the opposite way and make it worse. But, most of us kind of, they just didn't align with me. We weren't in love anymore, and we didn't have our business values aligned, and then at the time you're like, we did this. And then it's like, and then, and being able to do that and give that space, it allows people, when they come back together again, to often be more gracious and to see what were the positives, so we can be in the same space, be cordial and get along, maybe co-parent at holidays, maybe even still sponsor each other's businesses or co-host something in a different way with better agreements. I think it's an amazing opportunity. So thank you guys for bringing this opportunity for us to share.
Yeah. I gotta say that, Roger, you talked about how your employee came and said, it's like, I feel like I'm at home and my parents are fighting, but the clients are gonna feel it too. Because now it does trickle down to the employees, and then their behavior is going to trickle down to the clients. So there is a trickle effect. So when there is resentment, when there is anger, when there's turmoil, it has to be addressed right away, because otherwise it's almost like a disease. It's going to keep getting worse and worse unless you take care of it.
I agree.
It's so critical that we look at the business on a regular basis, not just when it starts to go downhill, but even when it's at the best parts, so that we can renew those parts, redo them again, make sure that we're not leaving someone or something aside that can even benefit more if we focus on those aspects of our business. When we consider business overall, business is family, right? Because where do we spend most of our time? In business.
The people at work.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. So who are those people? Yes, maybe they are your employees, but if you just treat them like an employee, they're going to treat you just like a job. something they're looking to get out of, right? Just over broke is nobody wants to be there. So we want to make sure that we're treating them almost like family, that we're taking care of them, that we're giving them what they need so that they're happy to come to work, not that they're miserable and going, oh my gosh, when can I get out of this place? So
that goes both.
what we do is going to help along.
Both aspects. So, Heather, I'd love to hear what your opinion is this, because I've always told people when you're at work and when you're with your business partner, you don't want to be working at work with your business partner, because then it's not fun. They're just work. You got to have fun and be playful. And same thing when you're with your relationship. You know, people say work at your relationship. I always tell people don't work on your relationship. Focus on fun in your relationship, and then it might work for itself.
Yeah.
So tell a little bit more about that too, and maybe do if you could also cap the myth behind, you know, like sometimes people are like, they see sex and sex therapists and they're like, I don't want to talk about that, but they realize that it's not necessarily about the act of. It's like what's in your head.
Right. Yes. Okay. Lots of good things to touch on there. So with the work versus fun with the relationship, I totally agree with you. I like to use the word like nurture your relationship. It's not that there's no effort, but like it maybe is be intentional about fun. Maybe that's like the work, you know, but it's so much more motivating and kind of creates this naturally positive feedback loop. And for sure, the same thing applies with work. And, you know, I, in the past have had, you know, a team of 7 therapists and a office manager working for me. And you really do have to start to think about like, what culture am I creating here? And I think taking this sort of like whole person perspective in the workplace, it's kind of like not how I was like brought up. I actually I have a finance degree and I started as a market research analyst out of college. So I did kind of work in corporate America and I know what that can be like. And that setting was very much like, you know, put in the hours and, you know, don't bring your personal life to work and, you know, that type of thing. But I don't think that's particularly effective. I think when people can be a whole human and like you said, Sifu, like sort of that family connection, then they're also going to be more likely to be honest with you if like something is not coming up, and you can like accommodate things and work together towards solutions when there is an issue, instead of them feeling like they have to hide things from you because you're not actually creating a safe space as an employer. So I think that's super important. Okay, then into the sex stuff. Let me see what I missed the comment, but
it's there.
Oh, if you bring up sex, they have a specific thought of what that means, not taking. Yes, exactly, Michael. And it is interesting when people are considering hiring me, because sometimes they're like, oh, well, we don't want to start with the sex stuff. I'm kind of like, well, first of all, I was a couples counselor before I was a sex therapist. I just like added a specialty. And like you said, Dr. Andrea, it's very holistic. You know, and my background is, you know, I have a health coach certification. I'm a Shambhala meditation guide. I'm an IFS therapist. So I'm really bringing this whole mind, body, spirit approach to it. My method that I use with clients is called the Pathway to Passion. And the entire like first tier of it, which has 3 steps, is all emotional mastery. We don't even talk about sex. Like, it's getting really aligned with your priorities. It is communicating really well, and it's learning how to manage your own emotions, because those are the skills that allow you to then like hold space for your partner and have those vulnerable conversations that are honest and are going to get you to a level of understanding where you can find the solutions in the bedroom. But if you haven't established that foundation and we just jump into, you know, what tips and tricks do we have in the bedroom, they're going to run into obstacles trying to implement that, right? And so we really lay a nice foundation first.
Very good. Very good. Roger, when you're talking about laying the foundation and with your business and your expertise, what comes to mind?
Can I ask you to just be a little bit more specific with, I just want to make sure I answer the question correctly. When you say laying the foundation.
So I am asking a question of your subconscious mind. So you answer it of whatever feels right. Because what I want to get to is not necessarily what I'm asking may not be what we need to know, but you know what we need to know. So you go ahead and answer it of what you need to tell us more than what we're necessarily asking.
Let me add to that before you do.
Yeah.
You're a franchisor. You have what, 43 different franchisees who report to you. You're conducting and helping them navigate the waters of business, if you will, right? How to avoid the sharks, how to navigate and swim in the right places. And that is a huge vessel. So how do you navigate that in relation to the question that Dr. Andrea asked?
And then I said, laying the foundation.
Yeah. That, with that extra context, that's an easy question for me to answer. It's starting with your values, your business values, which may be different than your personal values, but probably very, very similar. But if any of us, I worked for the Fortune 50 companies when I was first starting my career, and I know they had values. I'm sure they were on a wall somewhere, or in a binder in the bottom of my desk, but I never looked at them. And the difference is, they did a mission, vision, value because they thought they were supposed to. But values. I wrote a book that launched a year ago, and the first chapter is around laying the foundation, and it's values. It's until you get your values right, how do you know how to hire? How do you know how to fire? How do you know what kind of client that you do want? How do you know what kind of client you don't want? Like, people a lot of times get into business and they just happen chance kind of start to figure it out, where you can be so much more prescriptive by deciding what do you stand for, what will you not tolerate, what lights you up, and what would you be proud to put on the wall and talk about with every customer, every employee, and openly make decisions and say, well, what is the right decision here? Well, what do our values say we should do? Well, we should make this tough call. Okay, the call is actually easy. We follow our values. The consequences could be hard. The decision's easy. The consequences could be hard. And so I've found, and my experience has been, having real values, not some BS on the wall, real values that you go to, and that an employee has the right, the privilege, and the empowerment to challenge the CEO, the leader, the founder, whomever, and say, why are we going in this direction? Because that doesn't align with the values that we always reference. And when they have the power and they're empowered and they feel comfortable to challenge whomever, the highest person in the organization, specifically on the values and the alignment of a decision on those values, you got a company that it is going to grow. It's going to grow, and it's going to build because you have alignment. And too many times people come in, and to use that word foundation, well, I'm passionate about this. I think I've got a good product or service, and I'm going to hire good people, and then we're going after it. Rewind the tape, man. What do you stand for? What do you stand for? What does this business stand for? Yeah. What would make you walk away from a multi-million-dollar client? I don't know if I would. And then you really don't have strong values, right? Because there probably is something that would make you walk away and to me, the foundation starts with your values. Then you build your irresistible offer, you build your processes, your SOPs, you go through it, you have your operations and make sure you're measuring your 4 to 6 critical KPIs. That's all stuff you can find in a book.
Yeah.
And follow a plan. It's the values and studying that and sticking with it when things get hard. It's easy to have values when things are going well.
Oh, yeah.
When they get hard, then people get more flexible with them, and that's when they should be more rigid. That's when they should be more rigid.
That's when they give way to their values and they start to, this one aligns better with that guy or this one or that company. And you're right, they fall short.
Yep.
You made me think of something, Roger. I have a show myself called the Wealth and Legacy Secrets, and one of the questions we ask about people is when did they know they had made it? And what you just made me realize is when you ask that question, what would make you walk away from $1 million client? When you said that, it made me realize that was the second level of knowing I made it. When I knew that I was comfortable saying, nope, I don't want that. I would rather have 0 than have that. And it's not even of knowing I made it, but of when I made it as a person, not made it as a business, but as when I could stand in solidarity that I was in alignment with myself and my values, when I was able to say, not having that anymore.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah. Heather, what about values in the relationships that's been coming up for you?
Yeah. I do think that's really important. And actually, speaking also of turning clients away, I had a couple who I met with recently for a free consultation, and it was really clear to me in the chat that like they weren't even sure if they were like on the same page with what they wanted long term. Like they got married, you know, but they kind of acknowledged like it basically was lust, you know. And it was very honest. Thank you. But yeah, I was kind of like, I think you guys really, really need to think like if you guys are both kind of like your best selves, do you even want the same things under that scenario? Because from what I'm hearing, I'm not sure that you do. So if you do, and it could be like, hey, we're going to both put 110% in. Yes, we can get there. But without that alignment, it's, I also think people aren't going to make the effort because like they know somewhere deep down, like this is not actually what I really want. And that is also something that applies to business. You know, I think I got to a point with my business model that I had to kind of do that self-reflection too, and recognize this model of taking insurance and having a physical location is just not the right model for me. And Roger, when you were talking, like the phrase emotional bravery, which is like one of my favorite qualities in people,
I like that.
Came up because it's this like bravery to face things and to be honest and to make the tough decision. And that's really integrity. And so whether it's, you know, being really honest with yourself in business that like, I have to make some uncomfortable changes and, you know, let go of my employees because this model no longer works for me. And yes, there's going to be consequences of those decisions, but because of, you know, my clarity, I'm able to kind of do that in, like you said, Sifu, like a proactive way, you know? So when I did wind up letting go of employees and completely changing my model, I was able to give them 6 months notice and help them find new jobs and to do it in a really like positive, amicable way that didn't, you know, burn any bridges.
You finished impeccably.
Thank you. I try. I do. I think it's important in relationships that like we try to, you know, leave ego out of it as much as possible and just be compassionate towards people. So that was my goal. Cause I'm like, I actually really like these people too. You know, it's like, I'm not doing this because I don't like them. They were fantastic. But yeah, so it's been nice to kind of still be able to keep in touch with some of them and, you know, support them in their private practices. And I did a consultation call with one of them who, you know, had a sex related case they needed some help with. And so it's really nice to still have those connections.
It's important to really have the values, because when I first started one of my businesses, I was taking everybody as a client. I'm like, come on, let's go. And then you even took the bad apples and you didn't realize the bad apples were infecting the others. And then one day I said, why am I hurting myself? And I made a decision, no more.
Mm-hmm.
I said, first you have to go through a process. It's whether I accept you as a client. I no longer just take every client. And it made them, whoa, what do you mean you're not going to take me? Do you know who I am? I'm like, not yet, but give me a chance, I will. Right? We need to find out who they are so that we can continue that business.
Yeah.
To continue that relationship. Do I want to invest in a relationship that's going to be a fake all along and then just be gone and hurt and take other people with them? Not worth it.
Yeah.
By the time we have come to the end of our show, what?
Man,
I
felt
know
we
we're
just
having
got
such a
started,
great
but
time.
We're
Yeah,
so
went
good.
fast.
It went fast.
Flew. What I want to do right now is give you each 30 to 45 seconds. Tell us how we can reach you, how the clients can reach you, new clients, people who are interested in what you have. So Heather, why don't you go first? Your website is going across your YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for having me here. If people are curious to follow up and learn more about what I do, they can check out my YouTube channel. So I also have a podcast, Ask a Sex Therapist. So the whole podcast is on there. My website is on there. If people are in a spot where they feel like, hey, I'm kind of like checking the box. Sex has kind of become a chore. I love my partner. It's just, kids and life and stress and, hormone changes have gotten in the way. And, this is really important to us. Then, reach out. We could do an intimacy breakthrough call, which I offer those for free to see if it is a good fit. And I do say no to people as we've been talking, but not, it's not to be a jerk. It's because I want to make sure it's the right fit for everybody. But so that's where people can find me and find out more about what I do in the world.
Great. Thank you so much. Roger, you're up, my friend.
Sure. Yep. So I don't have a coaching practice or anything along those lines, but I do have a podcast as well. It's called ThriveMore with Roger Martin. Spotify, YouTube, Apple, whatever. I have a book called An Insider's Guide to Business: Secrets from an Entrepreneur's Playbook. It's available on Amazon. There are 2 Roger Martins. One's a professor in Toronto and me. So you got to make sure you type in An Insider's Guide to Business. I say that because I get tagged and linked on LinkedIn for things that are not me. That's him. I'm like, you did such an amazing lecture. I'm like, that wasn't me, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to learn about franchising, what it means, like what is a franchise? How does that work? If somebody has a business and they're thinking, well, I kind of want to scale it, but I don't have the capital. Franchising is a way to do that because you can scale without the capital because you're using other people's capital, but they own the business. Of course, you just earn a royalty. They can go to ThriveMoreBrands.com, ThriveMoreBrands.com, and there's a bunch of no obligation stuff on there and case studies and ways that they can learn more about franchising our brands, which are RockBox Fitness, Beem Light Sauna, which is an infrared. So RockBox is a boxing group fitness. Nobody gets hit, just group fitness concept. And then Beem Light Sauna is an infrared sauna concept, all private suites and whatnot. And then if you want to follow me on the socials when I do business tips and some goofy stuff too, just about my personal life, they can follow me at Real Roger Martin, ROGER.
Perfect.
Lovely.
Thank you so much. Dr. Andrea.
Well, I'm Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller, and I own the Red Carpet Connection. And what we do at the Red Carpet Connection is we help you to be seen, heard, and understood by the right people in the right ways so that you become, and your products become, services become unforgettable. So, thanks.
Love it. I'm Sifu Rafael.
The Red Carpet Connection.com. And this is Sifu Rafael, the amazing man.
Well, thank you for that. It's my thing is really simple. That's Sifu, and that's Speaking Prowess. Speaking Prowess is my website where we guide people on communication skills, so that enhances your life, your personal, your private life, and your professional life. So don't stop leaving money on the table, people. Let us show you how. Thank you so much for being on the show, everybody. Have yourself an amazing, amazing day. And make sure you share the show with others who need to hear what we spoke about today. You guys stay on for a minute. We're going to say goodbye to everybody. Everybody, have yourself an incredible Friday. Take care.